Welcome to Longevity.Technology Unlocked, where we explore the science and tools that can help you live healthier for longer. I'm Dr. Nina Patrick.
And I'm Phil Newman. And now, Nina, when people think about longevity, they're obviously jumping in with supplements, exercise, obviously a lot of the cutting edge biotech. But there's really one part of the body that's really still massively overlooked in the longevity conversation, and that is oral health.
Exactly. The mouth isn't separate from the rest of the body. It's deeply connected to systemic inflammation, cardiovascular health, metabolic disease, and even cognitive decline.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in a short while. But of course, dentistry has really lived in its own silo. And today's guest is someone who spent many years breaking down that wall, using advanced diagnostics and precision technology and a systems-based view of the human body.
Exactly. We have Dr. Miguel Stanley. He is a globally recognized clinician, founder of the White Clinic in Lisbon, and one of the leading voices pushing dentistry into longevity and precision medicine era.
Yeah, and Miguel is also the founder of Slow Dentistry Movement, which is a pioneer in digital and biological dentistry, and someone who's really consistently challenging the ideas that oral health care should be reactive rather than preventives. Miguel, we're going to be talking about this in a short while.
Miguel, welcome to Longevity.Technology Unlocked.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Well, Miguel, it's lovely to see you again. And before we get into the detail of dentistry, let me ask you a little tangential question. You're living in Lisbon, which of course is a beautiful city, but what is your go-to holiday destination? Where do you kind of go where your spirit and your soul exists?
Good question. I have a wife and two young kids. I have she's almost 6 now, a 6 and an 8-year-old. We like the beach. We like waterfront. Flat water, warm water. So in the summer, we like Mediterranean. We like very low key. We don't do night clubbing or any of that stuff. And we early bed, early rise, because of the young kids, of course. So definitely the Balearic Islands. So the north of Ibiza is always beautiful in the summer. Stay away from the south, the confusion and mess. Caribbean is very nice, and if we're lucky enough, Maldives is just heaven. So we like safe but secluded, quiet, but definitely beachfront.
Perfect.
Beautiful.
Well, I
I'm
guess
also
that,
a beachfront holiday destination.
Yeah. So I mean, we all need our time out because you're a very busy guy, Miguel. So let's jump in and start asking you some of those killer questions.
Yeah, perfect. Let's start with some of the science. You've often said that the mouth is a mirror of your systemic health. So from a scientific perspective, what are we really missing when we separate dentistry from medicine?
Well, I want to just introduce that conversation to remind people of a very ancient treatise called the Treaty of Tordesilhas. And this is a very ancient treaty celebrated between the Portuguese king and the Spanish king 500 years ago in a little town south of Madrid, where very arrogantly the king of Spain and the king of Portugal, because now they'd started navigating and they'd found the commercial route to India, overnight destroying the Silk Route and making Venice the wealthy and the Doges one of the wealthiest hubs of commerce in the world. And so the Portuguese, via Vasco da Gama, found the route to India and started filling the boats with all the spices, and they got phenomenally rich. And then they said, hey, let's divide the world in half. And they made an invisible line between the one part of the planet and the other part, and that cut Latin America. We kept Brazil, right? There was a line, and they said, okay, everything within these lines is Portuguese, everything out of those lines is Spanish. And that is why we speak Portuguese in Brazil and Spanish in the rest of Latin America. Now, there's no wall. There's no wall. There's just an idea, an ancient signature 500 years ago, separating these, this whole thing. And it remains today. That's why, and I'm using that as a metaphor to a agreement about 250 years ago, separating dentistry from medicine.
Okay.
There's no wall. And I don't understand it. And it was just a mistake. We messed up. Humanity messed up. Why was there a separation in the first place? So we talk about that. The question you asked me today, which everyone is asking, it's an ancient treatise that should never have existed in the first part. I mean, how arrogant to have separated the mouth from the rest of the body. Why it was done was, again, a historical mistake where teeth were mechanics. The hairdressers were doing, the barbers were doing it. In the Black Plague, you had these guys going around, and it was considered beneath the elevated status of a physician to have to fondle in the mouth. That was disgusting. So let's leave those to the mechanics, right?
Okay.
So the barber dentist, and you can go to the museums in the UK and you can see the history of the barber dentist. And unfortunately, that separation existed. You siloed the mouth from the rest of the body, leading to something that today is absolutely insane, Phil and Nina, which is you can go to the top cancer centers on earth. You can go to the Cleveland Clinic, the Mayo Clinic, MD Anderson, the best centers on earth. And if you're trying to figure out what's wrong with your body, the body ends at ENT, ear, nose, throat. So if your mouth is full of infections and you have root and dental problems going on, they won't know about it. And in there lies the tragedy. Why? Because when we think about teeth, we forget that your teeth are embedded in your skull. I'm going to use different words now, but the tooth, it's the hardest structure in the human body. It's embedded into your maxilla. Your maxilla and your mandible are part of your skull. So let's go. This tooth is embedded in your skull. It is centimeters away from your brain, away from your eyes, from your sinuses. Okay. Moreover, the tooth, inside the tooth structure, you have the pulp. The pulp contains one of the largest concentrations of stem cells in the human body.
Wow.
Why?
Okay.
Why? If you go online, you can see wisdom teeth extracting stem cells from the wisdom teeth. So we know that in our body, we have in our blood, in our bone marrow, in our fat. So autologous stem cell therapy, that's where you harvest it from. So the richest concentration will be from your hip, then your fat, and then your blood will have the lowest concentration of circulating stem cells. But few people know that inside your pulpal chamber of your teeth, you have a lot of stem cells. Why? Because teeth are really important. Moreover, you'll have nervous system, nerves, and you'll have blood vessels, and you will have lymphatic system. So all of that is called the pulp, and every single tooth has that inside it. Yet somehow we think there's just a nerve inside it. There's a living entity of vascular, lymphatic, nervous system, and stem cells inside teeth, because teeth can actually self-regenerate. I mean, it's limited, but they can. So, and again, everybody's oblivious to this sacred biology inside a tooth. Let's put it that way. And inside the tooth, and then it's stuck inside your skull. And if you have a tooth infection, and it goes into the bone, you now have a bone infection in your skull. And if you have a bone infection in your skull, why is that just dentistry? That's just, the questions that I'm probably going to ask more questions than answers to.
So let's talk a little bit about how we get into that diagnosis, Miguel. So obviously your clinic is very well known for integrating advanced imaging, AI-driven diagnostics, and you have digital workflows to support all of that. So how has technology changed what we see and measure and intervene compared to, those 250 years of traditional dentistry?
I love the question. So about 50, 60 years ago, a lot of the haters, they catch me on little mistakes I make in time steps. But once I went on national television, and I'm a bit dyslexic, and I said there were 36 teeth, and you have no idea. I was just destroyed
because it's only to walk back from these things sometimes. I know what you mean.
But anyway, when the invention of X-ray, dental X-rays have been around for a long time. So those little film X-rays in America, they call them FMX. And still today, they are the standard of care in diagnostics. So you take these little X-rays, localized X-rays. About 30 years ago, they became digital, so much less radiation. But this allows us to take small little X-rays of the mouth. So let's go 30 years ago, the standard of diagnostic was multiple of those little X-rays, clinical observation, and a little probe to look around the tooth. So it's very human-centered by a little X-ray. Amazing. It was disruptive in our standard of diagnostic. Fortunately, still today in 2026, that's still the standard of diagnostic in over 50% of all clinics around the world. And that's insane. No upgrade in how we're looking into patients' mouths. And what we're doing, and the disruptive way we're doing it now, to answer your question, is cone beam computerized CBCT. So that's 3D cone beam. That gives you 3D understanding of that, the volume, which was missing in 2D, intraoral scanning, saliva testing, chairside vitamin D testing, and using special technology to create avatars of our patients by stacking different tech to actually create a 3D virtual patient, which allows us to just see everything. And we can do all that in the first 20 minutes.
Wow. And I guess that is moving things into really this next wave. So yeah, I mean, Nina.
So what are you finding in this more three-dimensional comprehensive scanning that we couldn't find 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
Great question. So much is lost in the 2D. So if you are, let's phase the patients. If you are a healthy adult and you have never had dental work in your mouth, you've never had a tooth extracted, your wisdom teeth are all out in the mouth, everything's fine, you don't really need to have a 3D cone beam. You don't, honestly. All right. However, these things are digital, so they have less radiation than a flight from here to London, Lisbon to London. They're very, very low dose radiation. And the amount of information you can gather from these is amazing. You'll be able to see sinus. You'll be able to see if there are hidden infections behind the teeth that many times in a 2D, you can't see that. And so also the quality of a film X-ray versus a digital X-rays, you actually get to see the pixelation, you get to see better images, more crisp, plus they don't fade over time, and they're more eco-friendly, by the way, because you don't have all the chemicals and stuff. So 3D really allows you to see pretty much everything. I mean, imagine going to a heart specialist and having technology from 30 years ago as part of your, data acquisition for your diagnosis. You're like, hang on, I want an MRI or whatever they're using. You want state-of-the-art tech. So that's the first thing, that third dimension. And I've been using cone beam for 16 years now. I mean, you just see so much more. And many times you can have a patient come in saying, I want veneers. And you might overlook that CBCT because, hey, it's cosmetic dentistry, which is fair. But you take a CBCT as standard of care, all right? And all of a sudden you see they have a tumor in their mandible. And you're like, hey, did you know you have a tumor in your mandible? And they're like, oh my God, nobody knew why I was sick. Or patients that are trying to improve their VO2 max and they have massive cysts inside their sinuses and they didn't know they had a cyst inside their sinus from a tooth that's draining into their sinus that you cannot catch in those simple 2D X-rays. So vision is everything. I mean, you have to see that. Then in the saliva testing, where it gets really interesting. So I work with a company. I have no shares or any. I don't have equity in these businesses, but I work with a company that invented a chair-side instant saliva test. So it gives you instant metric for active MPP8. So what is that? MMP8. Sorry, active MMP8. It's a enzyme that is produced when you have collagen breakdown. So if you have a lot of inflammation, you will produce a higher level of active MMP8. And with a simple saliva test, you can measure this. So the baseline would be 10, and anybody over 10 will show that they have inflammation in their saliva. Now, where it's coming from, what type of bacteria, we won't know, but we know you have that high level. The same machine, a little bit of blood, a little finger prick like a COVID test, will measure your level of circulating 25-hydroxyvitamin D, your vitamin D levels. So, and again, instant chairside. So within the first 20 minutes, I've got a 3D cone beam. I have a saliva test and a vitamin D test. And now I'm looking into the mouth just to see the rest of things. Why is it important? Inflammation, if you have a very high number, that will mean you've got something going on in your mouth that is producing collagen breakdown. And if your vitamin D levels are low, that means your immune capacity for fighting, your immune modulation is low, because that's directly linked to bone modulation, because vitamin D captures calcium, right? So if you have periodontal or gum disease, you're going to be losing bone. And if your vitamin D is low, how are you going to stop that? So it's a very clever way of instantly helping your patients understand, making the invisible visible.
Yeah.
And then you can supplement vitamin D. You can create specific protocols. Instead of going twice a year, you're like, hey, you have to come 5 times a year or 6 times a year, because most people think that you should visit the hygienist twice a year. But what if you have high levels of active MMP8? you should come more often. And moreover, you should aggregate perhaps laser coadjuvant therapy to reduce the pathogenic overload around your gums, and definitely supplement with vitamin D, K2 to bring your immune modulation up. So now we can have more tailor-made protocols for patients.
So, Miguel, let's talk a little bit about this, because inflammation keeps coming up all across longevity science. So, can you talk a little bit about the role of chronic inflammation, periodontal disease, and obviously these hidden infections, and how that comes into the longevity and biological aging agenda?
I'm going to try and be as concise as possible. There's two cohorts of patients in that discussion, all right? You have those that have never had dental treatments. They have no complicated dental work. I said this at the Buck Institute. There was the longevity roundtables, and I was very lucky to go on stage and talk about this work. And I used a sentence I'd never used before. There's two types of humans in this arena of oral longevity: altered humans and non-altered humans. An altered human has some dental work, a little or a lot of dental work. The mechanics of their mouth has been changed by a human, right? There's work done there. Maybe it's good work, maybe it's bad work, maybe it's new work, maybe it's old work, maybe the materials are toxic, maybe they're not, but they're altered. And then you have the unaltered humans, those that have never had dental work, their teeth are great. So the viewers watching this, they need to self-identify which part of the fence that they're on. If you are on the non-altered human, so you're healthy, you've always taken care of your teeth. If I start talking about, subclinical chronic infection around dental implants and all, you lose because I lose you because you're not aware of that conversation. So let's talk about the first cohort, unaltered humans that have, healthy mouths, healthy teeth, and how does that impact them? That will be gingivitis and or periodontal disease, one of the most studied illnesses in medicine today. And the major player in that disease is P. gingivalis, Porphyromonas gingivalis. It's a bacteria that has been very well studied and present in two new publications, but one of them is critical. It was published by JAMA, the Journal of American Medical Association, in September 2025, so very recently, and found an absolute correlation between that bacteria and pancreatic cancer.
Wow.
One of the most deadly cancers that we know. Now,
Really?
it'd be no surprise that patients with periodontal disease usually are very correlated to diabetes. And diabetes, we know, is also directly affected by systemic and chronic inflammation, right? Some people are even thinking that is it chicken or chicken egg in regards to diabetes and P. gingivalis. We need more evidence on that. We need more studies on that. But one thing's for sure, if you are battling cancer, pancreatic cancer, and if you are battling diabetes, you definitely should not have P. gingivalis in your oral microbiome. How do you get rid of it? More regular trips to your hygienist and or dentist. Measure your active MMP8 regularly. Use lasers to decontaminate your gingiva and not just oral scraping, because lasers, specifically erbium YAG lasers, we have proven this study. We've done longitudinal studies here at the White Clinic. The laser is a water laser. It vaporizes water molecules. So bacteria, fungus, virus, parasites, protozoas, they just gone, right? And you don't need to take medication. And that's mechanistic in its action. And moreover, with the data set that you can get from active MMP8 testing and vitamin D testing, you can supplement according, and you can sequence therapies and sequentially measure. Like that's what longevity is about, sequential measuring until you're optimal, your baseline is good. So for the unaltered human, that's how simple the protocol is. Measure and make sure your dentist is using CBCT diagnostics to measure your bone levels above and beyond simple probing. So for the periodontist watching this, are like, oh my God. I'm like, think about it. You're using a method that was invented 30 years ago. It's time to upgrade with tech. That's what longevity is all about. Any doctor in the world can become a longevity expert if you have the tech, if you create a baseline and you know how to optimize things. And you can only optimize things not by talking, but by changing habits. So the patient has to change their habits at home. And if you're smoking and drinking and not brushing your teeth, get out of my way. I will not treat you. I will not treat you. You have no space in this. Patients have to bring their A game. There's no wonder miracle thing. You can't just, say, hey, here's my problem, fix it. It's like going to the gym. You have to put in the work. So patients that are suffering from this, put in the work. When I see a patient battling cancer and they're still smoking, I refuse care, period. That's just, what's the point? What's the point? And why are you worried? It's crazy. And I don't care.
For someone that might be, they're coming to you and they are a smoker and maybe they are overweight and they have some aspects of their lifestyle that they want to change. Do you suggest a bit of a behavior change plan to them before you just kind of refuse care? And like, how do you design their dental and oral care interventions, considering all those things, and genetics and stress and all these things as well?
So regarding weight or any other factor, that's never an issue. I'll treat 100 everybody. Smoking is a hard no on anything periodontal. Hard no. Any surgery or any periodontal treatment, if you smoke, I will not treat you. And people say, why? Well, first of all, I'm not a hospital. I'm a private institution, and I am focused on success. And if you don't want to make the changes that we can together collaborate to exact success, and you want to keep a poor habit that is just a no-brainer, that's like really bad for your gums and teeth and your systemic health. Why, Anina? It sounds tough, but I'm going to have bad results, and you're going to blame me for my bad results, not for your poor habits. So if you want to get in the game with me, quit smoking, period. You can drink, you can do whatever. Smoking, hard no. So let's go back to those are unaltered humans. And to go back to your question, Phil, about chronic inflammation, subclinical inflammation. There are two types of inflammation. The one that you can see, right? So the big acute inflammation, so like an abscess or pus or swelling, that's acute, and that anybody knows how to identify and treat. And then you have subclinical. You don't feel it, all right? You don't see it in the mouth. It doesn't hurt. And here's a first myth bust, Phil and Nina. Sorry, pain it's not a symptom. You will have no pain. You could have every tooth with a cyst in your mouth, like a large cyst, and it can never hurt you. So pain sometimes, many times, is the last symptom. It's too late. Once it starts hurting, it's too late. So you shouldn't wait to have pain in your mouth. That's ridiculous. Now let's go to the worst of the two. So in the altered humans that have bridges, root canals, implants, now, or have had extractions or some dental work done, you could have infections around the root of that tooth or around the implant. Around the implant, it's called peri-implantitis, and around the tooth, it's called periapical infection, all right, or peri-implant or periodontal infection. Once it goes into the chronic phase, studies will show that the bacteria and the pathogens in these infections, just the range is incredible. And studies from 2022 can link this to Alzheimer's, rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. And Nina, your work in the brain, we know that bacteria doesn't pass the blood-brain barrier, but inflammation does. So inflammatory biomarkers, even active MMP8, they can activate microglial activity in the brain. Now, if you think about it, your teeth, your mandible has a nerve that goes through it that's part of the trigeminal complex. So the trigeminal complex, obviously part of your neural network, is in the brain. So if you have an infection in a lower molar, it's literally sitting on the nerve. And that infection is like a powerhouse producing inflammation that's going straight, activating that nerve going into the brain. You get rid of that infection properly with correct protocols, which I can talk about later. People's brains start changing because you've got less inflammatory activity affecting the brain. Now, that's not by reducing the infection. It's by reducing the low-grade chronic inflammation that is activating that. Now, so how do you identify this? Well, you have to have a cone beam. You have to run specific blood tests. And just a quick caveat here. If you are doing orthopedic surgery, any orthopedic surgery, let's say you're removing a bunion from your foot, basic walk in, walk out, same day intervention, your orthopedic surgeon wants blood panel. He wants ECG. There's some basic blood work done before you go in, even if it's local anesthetic. Dentists, nothing. X-ray, clinical observation.
Hmm.
And that's the challenge we're facing.
Yeah. So I guess, Miguel, we're talking about really, and before we started recording the podcast, we were talking a little bit about what's happening in the industry now. We're seeing a lot of longevity clinics around the world. A lot of them are amazing clinics. We're now starting to see this integration of dental care into the holistic approach. So what are you seeing now in your journeys around the world, as well as the work that you're doing yourself, about really integrating dental into a fully informed longevity clinical model?
I think we're far away. Dentistry is too siloed. That invisible wall that I spoke about in the beginning is very powerful, very powerful. And when I give my lectures, one of my opening slides is, what is dentistry? And until we have a better understanding or better segmentation of our of what dentistry means to be. So I'll get to your question in a bit, but here's the sad thing. A patient could be suffering from fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, these modern chronic inflammations, Hashimoto's, or cancer. And they say, you know what? I'm going to go to a dentist and I'm going to clean up my mouth because I saw this podcast with Phil and Nina. And yeah, man, I'm going to go to my dentist, right? And they go to the dentist in Beverly Hills. They're the best dentist in Beverly Hills. And they come home with 12 veneers. And the dentist said, these are organic and bio. So when does it stop being cosmetic? And when does it start being biological? Is there money in biology, or is there only money in aesthetics? What does insurance? Nina touched on that earlier. Does your insurance company cover this? Does it not cover this? And so I think, more important than anything, the work that you guys are doing is creating awareness around what does it mean to be a biological, integrative, functional, holistic, all of these words, longevity dentist.
Yeah,
all
this is the old beauty on the outside, beauty on the inside argument, which is really where the aesthetics industry has been for a very long time and is in transition.
It's in transition, right? So if you look at what's happening in dermatology and plastic surgery, less invasive, less injectables, and it's beauty from within. So now we're looking at the peptide conversation, the exosomes, the stem cells, right? Nutrition. I can tell you one thing, just on the conversation of aesthetics, you'll be surprised at how many patients we have, and I've been doing this for 30 years, okay, that their skin clears up after you remove all of the oral infection. And people are like, oh my God, my skin's cleared up. Well, it's a no-brainer. You remove an infection producing inflammation, literally adjacent to your skin. Of course, it's going to clear up. And by the way, we have protocols where we always augment patients' vitamin D. So, of course, it's a combination of things. So people get healthier and their skin clears out. But to answer your question, case in point, if you want a place in the longevity dental universe, above and beyond your training, let's say all dentists, being good, you have to have cone beam 3D CBCT as a foundational diagnostic tool on site, preferentially. You have to have a long first appointment. So a 15-minute first appointment just doesn't cut it. I delegate that to my onboarding patient. None of that. The doctor has to be in the room for at least an hour and a half to 2 hours, right? Because the foundation of any longevity consultation is education. A doctor, first and foremost, has to be a teacher. You have to educate your patient, because if they're not on board, if you can't educate them, then you can't get that, you can't exact transformation. And then it's all data. You have to have that baseline. You have to have the benchmark, and then progress through time. So you have standardized optimization of your patient's oral care. So first comes improved biology, remove all infection, subclinical and clinical, via, surgery or with gum treatments, whatever, remove tooth decay, remove all infection, active infection in the mouth. And then second, rebuild function. So get the bite, the mechanics. So your TMJ is all stable. That gets very expensive. And then only last but not least, do you do aesthetics? So aesthetics is the last thing. So unfortunately, aesthetics still today in dentistry where the money is. And a lot of people want to come out, I want a beautiful smile, and they don't have money for all three phases. And so then it's almost a spiritual thing between the dentist and the doctor. And I'm not going to get into that conversation. But if somebody comes to me and says, I want aesthetics, and they've got cysts, oh, no, 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 no. And no matter how much money they put on the table, I refuse care. And I have for 25 years, Phil.
Okay, so Miguel, a common theme I heard in what you were describing about the traditional dentistry experience is this rushed care, a doctor coming in and only seeing you for 15 minutes or so. And something I've noticed in the difference of dentistry between the time I've been in the United States and also the time I've been in Europe is, well, first off, we don't really do a lot of x-rays in common dentistry or traditional dentistry in Europe, while in the United States, this is something you do once a year. And I was being told I have a cavity almost every 6 months. And I had fundamentally thought, okay, I have weak enamel or something is wrong with, I don't know, my diet or maybe inflammation or something like this. But now I've been cavity free for the 7 years I've lived in Europe. And I find this very curious. Is this a case of over-treatment in the United States? Or have I really just become a lot better with my oral health since I've moved?
Damn, you went there.
Tell me.
Nina, look, that's a big question, and it had a lot of undertones to it. Look, there are cases and there are cases. All right, there's some business. So there's a business in America called DSO. You have them in UK as well. They're called dental networks, whatever. And usually they are run by a CEO. They have fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. And these are big hedge funds or groups that buy clinics. And it's very financially driven, okay? And then you have your boutique, privately owned mom and pop practices where, the person treating you owns the biggest stake, maybe 51 or 52% or more. In my case, I own my clinic 100%. I don't have shareholders, right? So if I mess up, I'm the one paying for it, reputationally and financially, okay? So I think we're going to see a huge comeback, especially in the longevity dental space. So let's call it that, or dentistry 3.0, whatever you want to call it. You want your primary care physician, oral physician, to, be the guy responsible for the ultimate decision maker in the business as well, right? Because that's what ancient medicine was about. It was you had the tribal doctor that knew everybody, and he couldn't mess up because he was a pillar of authority. And we've lost trust in healthcare because that the person facing you many times isn't the ultimate authority in the ecosystem, right? So that's one thing. Regarding what you're talking about being cavity free in Europe, Europe tends to be a little bit more conservative in its approach to dentistry and more tech heavy, let's put it that way. Of course, if some of the best dentistry, tooth for tooth, dentistry in America is the best in the world, period. The best in the world. Mostly because of legal implications, education, money. People have more money, right? So on par, U.S. dentistry is just phenomenal. It really is, and it also comes down to money, how much money you have. So when I say what kind of a dentist do you have, it's not just how kind you are, how nice you are, how skilled you are. It's like, what's your arsenal? What toys are you using? You might be a very good dentist, but if you don't have upgraded tech and the good materials, you're going to provide subpar therapy. Now, that's why I created Slow Dentistry, Nina. So here at the White Clinic for 25 years, the minimum time for an appointment is 1 hour. That means if you come in and you just need 5-minute observation, that chair is empty for 55 minutes. And we use that time to do, whatever. We don't try and maximize time because you don't want to be rushed. Mental health is important. The mental health of my team, my staff. You don't want to rush things. We want to disinfect rooms properly in between appointments. That's a very expensive proposition, right? To only see maximum 8 patients per day per dental chair. The minimum in America is 16 per dental chair. Sometimes in the UK, on the NHS, for example, it's every 15 minutes. It's 4 patients per dental chair every hour. It's crazy. You can't do quality, safe care that way. And it's crazy for everybody. Everybody loses. And in terms of the x-ray, so in America, the dentist is responsible for everything they see in the x-ray. So those little small FMX x-rays are very convenient Because if you start using CBCT, full head CBCT like I'm doing, and you miss something, you're liable for not missing it. And why is that an issue? Because A, you're not probably using AI to help you see it, but you've only got 15 minutes to talk to the patient and you might miss something in the x-ray. So it's sad. I think AI is going to change all of that because it's coming into the space. So thankfully, more and more AIs are helping dentists and dental teams around the world analyze AI to not miss anything. And last but not least, I think that AI will be shared with the patient. And, any AI today is better than me, better than any dentist in the world, right? So the second that happens, then I think that things will get better and more equitable and fair around the world, and over-treatment will be a thing of the past.
Okay, let's talk about that a bit, Miguel, because obviously we've talked a little bit about the state of the longevity clinic industry and its crossover with dentistry. AI is still the diagnosis support tool rather than the decision maker at this stage. I'm sure that's going to change in time. What do you see about the context of the confluence of AI? We're moving into preventative. Regulatory activities need to upgrade potentially as we start moving into more standardized prevention diagnostics as well as interventions across industries. Tell me a little bit about what you see from a regulatory and innovation perspective over the next 5 years.
All right. To answer that question, people need to understand that colleagues watching this, I've never worked for government or insurance companies, or I've always just been private. So I don't have obstacles in the way that I think about the future. And plus I've been tech heavy for 25 years. So my brain sees things a bit different. So to answer your question, and I'm blessed with patients that can, that do what is necessary. I think I'm going to answer that question from what's going to happen.
Yeah,
I believe. So Meta glasses nowadays with the cameras and the little headphones, right? Or anything similar. I'm not promoting Meta glasses, but anything similar like that are going to completely change medicine. And let's talk about dentistry, for example. So something I can talk about. I think within 1 year or 2 years or less, a patient's going to walk in with their Meta glasses on, pre-programmed to say, filter out the bullshit. Excuse my language.
It's a family show.
If this doctor is overselling, finding fillings or cavities that shouldn't be there, and if he's saying stuff that isn't congruent to the latest data online, imagine this prompt, right? If he's saying things that are not up to date, not current, if he's overselling, if he's underselling, if he misses diagnostics, if the sequencing is wrong, if he's saying this is the best that and it's not, I want to know everything and let me know as he's saying it real time. Now, the x-ray comes on the screen. The doctor's like, oh, here you need this. No, you don't. And it's going to cost down the road, it's 500, right? And my success rate, no, it's not. So all of a sudden, the human doctor, the doctor that interfaces with you, if he doesn't back up his statements with AI, and I think that's the consensus from the congresses I'm going to. And I was recently at Harvard, in Boston 3 months ago, and it was the second symposium on artificial intelligence in dentistry, promoted by the dean. Some of the greatest minds in the world were there to talk about AI. And one of them was Jim Weinstein, who's the head of healthcare for Microsoft. And trust and transparency was the sovereign statement that everyone's talking about, because trust in healthcare has been eroded. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of pain, it's a lot of stress. Every dentist has a different way of cooking their things. We're not talking about eggs or coffee. You don't get to choose the way that you want to do things anymore. And your financial limitations on the constraints that your budget or the insurance company allows you shouldn't dictate how you want to treat this patient, because this patient might have enough money to go do it elsewhere. And your desire to keep that patient shouldn't be there. You have to be ethical. So imagine if you're interfacing a patient and you can't do what that patient needs. If in the future you're saying, oh, we can do this and this and that because that's what you can do, and the earpiece and the Meta glasses is saying, no, you need this. Now the patient has, hey, I thank you very much. I'm going to go elsewhere and get that second opinion and that therapy elsewhere. What's going to happen, Phil? An overwhelming amount of honesty and ethics will have to integrate into medicine. You won't be able to lie anymore. You'll have to know your homework. You'll have to be truthful. And I can't wait for those days to come. It's going to be an absolute revolution in healthcare. You're going to have to be honest. And it's not about your 5-star Google rating based on your customer service and the quality of your coffee and the waiting time and the pricing, because nobody studied that in dentistry school. Nobody studied that in medical school. We studied medicine, how to diagnose and treat and to be honest and ethical. And that's the Hippocratic oath we made. And so I think AI is going to absolutely rip everything apart by infusing healthcare with ethics and integrity.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, I love that perspective. I guess it's a bit like going to take your car to the garage, right? You end up paying for what you're told, but really you're really saying that the AI, of course, from the diagnostics perspective is going to be very helpful in improving service, but actually it's the informed patient that is going to be the revolution here.
Don't you see, Phil and Nina, don't you see that medicine, I think dentistry is medicine, okay? That's it. So medicine is a partnership between a doctor and a patient, right? Who's the authority in that relationship? It's like in marriage. No one. Both, it's 50-50, right? And the doctor has a responsibility to be ethical, honest, kind, good, and genuine. And the patient also has to bring a lot. They have to be honest and kind and truthful, right? So nothing is missed. And I think we lost that in the last 15, 20 years with, the excessive push of commercialism and consumerism. And again, I think that's fine. But now maybe we push too far. And we have to now find some balance and rebuild those relationships. So AI, of course, it's going to turn every doctor in the world into a super diagnostic leader. It's also going to help us understand the best treatment for that patient, the best materials for that patient, and the best sequencing for that patient. And here's another thing, Phil, that we can do in dentistry that few people can know about, but we can actually control the evolution of the case thanks to AI. So remember I said we can create an avatar? So, in architecture, so let's say you go to Norman Foster, you ask for a building. Norman Foster doesn't build the building; he designs the building, and then you get the builder. They are the ones that actually build it. But Norman Foster has a team that goes there all the time, or not him, but his team go there, and they control that the builders are doing it according to the plan. That relationship has happened for hundreds of years because you want to stick to the plan, right? That doesn't happen in dentistry. Most dentists want to be builders. Where's the architecture? And architecture is design thinking. It's good diagnostics and good treatment planning and sequencing. Those things matter. And they matter in the longevity conversation as well. Do I take this supplement before that supplement? How do I sequence my therapies over time so I'm not losing time, I'm not losing money, and I'm getting the best out of this adventure into the future of my longevity and well-being, right? And I think AI can really improve on that, making sure that fewer mistakes are made and everybody wins, the doctor and the patient. And that's what I'm trying to help elevate in my community as best as I can.
So do you think that relationship that you just described between this inequity between the doctor versus the patient has actually caused more harm, but with good intentions?
Yes.
Yeah. And with integrating AI into this, I also really would like to see a future where I have a little voice in my ear telling me, okay, that's ignore that, ignore that, ignore that. But how do we then ensure the safety or accuracy of that little voice that's going on in the AI so that we can, as a patient, also have good judgment?
Well, I wrote a paper on this a while back, an article, not a paper. I wrote an article a while back on how it was published on the International Dental Tribune on the fact that there's going to be different AI. There's already, I'm now working with 6 AIs, right? And sometimes I get a message from, let's say, ChatGPT, and then I go on Gemini, and Gemini's catches things that ChatGPT didn't, and you put them everyone's doing this, right? So that's also going to happen. So your AI is going to be strategically planned to only do one thing: protect you, right? Protect you. And I think that's very important that we understand that. And here's the sad truth, Nina. I'm a Gen X. I've got legacy dentistry in my mouth. I had fillings in the not in the 70s, but 80s. I had my first dental implant done maybe 20 years ago almost, still here. And now it's time for this work to be redone. I call this revision dentistry. And it's something that I'd like to talk about a little bit in a bit. It's quite important before we sign off. But where am I getting at? The AI is definitely going to help patients in the future understand how to protect themselves. And I think we need to have hope. We need to have hope. I mean, a lot of dentists are uncomfortable about this, but where am I getting at? I think that a lot of patients, Gen X's and baby boomers, will not have the amount of money that they need to actually fix the problems that they need fixing. And as a result of old and outdated dental work that is causing subclinical infections and inflammations that are affecting their systemic well-being. So I'll give you an example. I have a patient that she flew in from Australia, and she was so sick. She had 15 doctors. I mean, we've got everything documented. Her body was shutting down. She'd gone colorblind. Her brain was affected. Everything was affected. And her best dentist, the really good guys in Sydney, were only analyzing 2D, right? And in the 2D, everything looked okay. And so she was told that everything was fine. She jumped on a plane from Sydney to come to Portugal to see me. Upon CBCT, which in the first minutes, we understood that she had huge problems around all of her old dental work that the panoramic, the 2D, was hiding. And after intervention, within days, 90% of her symptoms disappeared. Within months, all of her symptoms had disappeared. That was 3 years ago. She's back on track. She's never taken medication, didn't have to go back to a doctor. And she had 15 different therapists. She was on a huge cohort of medication because those GPs weren't looking into the mouth. And when she was getting a report from a mouth, she was getting a 2D analysis. I think AI is going to completely end that. And that's my work, which I'm very focused on right now, which is the science of revision dentistry, which you have in pacemakers, you have in the hip, you have in, for example, hip replacement, one of the most common surgeries in the world, right? Really helps people walk and, all that pain. But it has a lifespan, 15 to 20 years, you need to change that hip. So hip surgery is the first time. Revision hip surgery is the second time. And it requires a bit more training. It's a bit more complicated to do, right? Who is owning revision dentistry? How do you have that discussion? Legacy dental work, really well done, but 30 years ago, it's like changing asbestos ceilings, right? It was a great idea, but it made people sick. We need to change that. It wasn't bad when it was done, but now it is. Do you understand? So it doesn't exist. The science of this doesn't exist. They're not teaching it at schools. Most dental universities teach first time round dentistry, how to get out of it first time. So biological problems on unaltered humans. There's very few science and protocols around changing legacy dentistry and upgrading that. And that's the biggest problem in the longevity conversation.
So would you say that if a dentist wanted to upgrade their practice into being more longevity focused, they should first off add the CBCT, and then second, get into this revision dentistry?
Yes. Again, the one that you can change people's lives the most is revision dentistry. Now, a lot of people like to call it biological dentistry, or they put all these names, and it's like clubs. I'm borrowing the word from orthopedic surgery, because revision dentistry is about subtraction, not addition. It's subtracting from your mouth old, outdated work that evidence-based is causing in low-grade subclinical infection. So traditional dentistry, you could have a root canal that was done 30 years ago, and you take in an x-ray, and it's got a little blackness at the base of the tooth, and it's fine. It's not causing any pain. It's fine. And it's considered aggressive to take that tooth out. Okay? Because there's this thing about, oh, are root canals bad? No, root canals are not bad. Bad root canals are bad. Old and outdated root canals that have inflammation evident in the CBCT are bad. All right? That's a different conversation. Is our hip replacements bad? No, but a 20-year-old one has to be replaced. Nobody argues that in orthopedics. Why are we arguing it in dentistry? How come? Who wrote the book that every single dental treatment should last forever? It's impossible. And then all of a sudden comes this emotional discussion. Oh, you did this implant 15 years ago and it failed. You're a failure and the dentist feels really bad. No, we've got to change that. Dentistry has a finite lifespan. Veneers, crowns, bridges, implants, root canals, finite lifespan. And there's evidence to back this up. So there comes a time when it stops being a mechanical or aesthetic benefit and it starts being an immunological liability. And the second it becomes an immunological liability, get it out. Clean the bone, laser, ozone, all of these protocols to deeply disinfect it and rebuild. And that is an amazing business opportunity, if you want to talk about business, for all of these dentistry wanting to upgrade.
Yeah,
but the protocol.
Let's talk about that a little bit, Miguel, because I guess, you're at these conferences, you're pioneering the work that you're doing. So you're circulating with maybe investors and institutions that are kind of seeing this. Is there a growing intersection now of oral health diagnostics fitting into longevity, or are we still in the early stages of this?
So as we discussed, I was at the Buck Institute. It's the third roundtable that they have, promoted by my dear friend Joanna Benz from Switzerland, and they've never had dentistry on the panel. You've got these top guys, and I've been going to these longevity meetings, wellness, longevity, whatever, and some of the top clinics. I'm not going to name names, but some of these top longevity centers on the planet that are charging $30,000, $40,000, $60,000 for a 10-day, no checkup, no dental checkup. And maybe that needs to change. That's that invisible wall I was talking about.
Yeah, I get it. So really what you're saying is that the opportunity is still wide open for people to get this right. And of course, we know from an investor perspective, whether it's VC or private equity, in more of a private equity scale, there are huge dental practice groups. They've got a lot of infrastructure already. If they upgrade that infrastructure, as we've seen with aesthetics clinics that are moving to longevity, the early stages of dentistry into longevity, that's presumably a large investment opportunity if people wanted to articulate it and start planning for it.
But a lot of those companies, they have shareholders and they don't want to mess with a safe environment. So this is safe, working, let's not. So if any investors are watching this, I'm actually in the process of, because I've got a lot of IP,
Right.
IP.
Yeah.
And that IP comes with an incredible network of the tech providers. So dentistry in the future has very little to do with the dentists. It has more to do with the ecosystem, much like a Formula One driver. If you say, who's the star of the Formula One driver? Some people might say it's the engineers. Some people might say it's the tire guys. Some people might say it's the guys that design the piston, or I don't know. It's definitely not just the driver. That's one thing for sure. All right. Drivers can be replaced. The team can't. All right. And so that's something very, very specific. It's nothing to do about just the dentist. It's about to do processes, systems, technology, sequencing. And we have that IP here at the White Clinic. And we are looking to make this more democratic and fairer. I think it's, I don't want to be, I just want it to be done right, because when you do it right, it can really change people's lives. And I'm scared about some actors coming into this longevity space saying, oh, I use red light. I'm a longevity expert in oral health care. And then moreover, sometimes you have to say a hard no. Some patients, if they don't accept the right therapy, the doctor should refuse care. Now, let me just talk on this very quickly. And when you bring shareholders and investors into this, whose bottom line is you making more money, you can't say no as a dentist to a patient that says, hey, I want to do 10% of my care. So let's do an analogy here. Imagine I had gangrene on 3 of my 10 fingers. What's the treatment for gangrene, Phil?
No idea.
It's amputation.
Oh, well, I should know that. I was in that industry for a long time.
If I have gangrene, you have to amputate. We've had that for 100 years. We know that. Now, imagine I'm a concert pianist and, you can't amputate 3 fingers. Could you just do the tip of one and then we see how it works? My insurance. The orthopedic surgeon, are you crazy? If you don't amputate, you're dead, right, Nina? Okay. What about, imagine I need triple bypass. And all of a sudden, my cardiologist, you need a triple bypass. Hey, doc, can we just do a single bypass this year? And then if my insurance covers it, then maybe if it goes well and I trust you, we can do the second bypass. No. Why in dentistry, if you've got 27 problems or 16 problems, I can't be put in that position. It's all or nothing. And unfortunately, it's very heavy financially for people that have a lot of problems. But if you have systemic health issues, if you have any one of the 22 non-communicable diseases directly linked to oral and systemic inflammation, such as rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, cancers, it's all or nothing. To understand the challenge that we face, Phil, it's huge. So I would urge anybody watching this that, small private banks start creating loans for people that can get this done, because revision dentistry, well done with specific protocols, can save lives. If not save, definitely improve. And if you're battling chronic systemic illness and you have legacy dentistry, even if it's well done, you should definitely go to somebody who knows how to diagnose this and look into it. Not fear-mongering, evidence-based diagnostics, supported by AI, proper treatment plan, proper sequencing, and the right tech to do it.
So what really needs to change so that the patient sees that this treatment isn't optional? It's not like a single bypass versus a quadruple bypass. If I have 2 cavities over here and 2 cavities here, what would, I guess, 10 years from now, in a very longevity-focused ideal dentistry, what would that look like so the patient just knows, it's like, no, I actually have to get all this done?
It's what you're doing right now. And thank you for this. It's education. It's amplifying this message. It's the penny falling. Does that exist? The penny dropping? Penny dropping.
Yeah, that's the one.
The penny dropping and people realizing, oh my God, choosing the dentist should not be a consumer-driven thing. So today, it's like, I'm going to go to gym. I'm going to go to the hairdresser. I'm going to go get, my eyes, the glasses. It's like, I'm going to get this done. But the hospitals, which this is not my sentence, but it's sick care. You go because you have to go there because you're sick, right? And you go to doctors, sick care. Longevity's healthcare, it's real healthcare. It's promoting healthspan and lifespan, obviously, right? And dentistry has a component of sick care, which is the current method, which is the drill, fill, pay the bill, or then treating, immediate issues, that single transaction dentistry. Oh, this hurts me. Okay, let's fix it. And that's 90% of the industry today. Longevity dentistry is the same mindset as longevity healthcare. It's baseline, it's sequencing, it's understanding. So I think to answer your question, Nina, it's just awareness. And the final thing would be insurance companies to finally understand and include revision dentistry the same way they include revision hip surgery or revision pacemaker. I mean, you have to change the battery every now and again, right? Yeah. So, and that's included. It's not frowned upon. It's accepted as part of the protocols. And I think that and that's not going to happen because dentistry is outside of the realm of insurance companies. So sooner or later, one big insurance company is going to understand that the sooner you fix oral inflammation, you're going to have less burden financially a decade or even instantly after that. And I'm seeing this with my patients. And I'm measuring biomarkers and chemokines and cytokines pre-surgery. And 6 months later, we're seeing 87% of our patients have massive reductions of their biomarkers following our protocol. 7%. That's not negligible. So imagine the impact in an insurance company that has to be out of pocket because they're trying to heal all of these systemic illnesses and they're overlooking this hidden elephant in the room that's literally sparkling with flames.
Well,
they're going to have to. They're going to have to accept it sooner.
Yeah, I guess what you're articulating there, Miguel, of course, is really what the whole industry is going through at the moment. We're seeing the transition now to preventative diagnostics and preventative knowledge, really mitigating all of those downstream issues. And I think that really today's been a very powerful reminder that not only do we have those challenges at the moment, but this seems like, both from a institutional workflow perspective, but from an investment perspective, as well as a really, really significant opportunity. And also a reminder that, longevity doesn't live in silos, right? Oral health really clearly plays a much bigger role in it than most of us really think. So thank you so much for sharing your perspective today. It's been really fascinating.
Thank you, Phil. And just one last thing, I would argue, just a take-home message. And again, thank you, Nina. Thank you, Phil. I would argue, what if you could go in a time capsule for those people that have spent a lot of money on their healthcare? I mean, I have cases of people that were really sick, and unfortunately, due to the lack of knowledge and awareness, I was the last physician in their journey. And we found things that, had they started with us, could have saved them a lot of pain, suffering, and money. What if the oral physician, not just your dentist, a dentist who gets it, and there's a lot of them out there, don't get me wrong, right? Good guys and girls that know what they're doing, right? What if the dentist was one of the first physicians that you went to? This dentist that's doing the protocol, CBCT, in the right way. What if they were one of the first? And you getting rid of that subclinical oral inflammation, which is evidence-based, proven to cause over 22 systemic diseases. What if that was the first person you went to in your journey, not the last one? I'll leave you with that.
I like that perspective, because also the dentist is somebody, at least for me, I see twice a year, which is more than my GP. So this could be a very easily adopted intervention into the care plan. So for listeners that want to learn more about your work and you, or maybe want to come see you, where do they find you?
MiguelStanley.com.
Perfect. That's nice and easy. Well,
Perfect.
If you enjoyed today's episode, do follow the show and do share it with someone who cares about their long-term oral health and their overall health. So thanks for joining us today.